Jimothy Kimmel is returning to air, Disney announces. Let's take a look.
On the air tomorrow. ABC says in a statement that we made the decision last week to suspend production to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment. But now, after having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, the ABC says we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. So Kimmel's getting back to work.
Wow, Brian, that is significant, especially given that some of the players outside of Disney in a corporate setting like Nexstar and Sinclair, they essentially have deals that allowed them to preempt his show, and that's part of the reason that it was suspended. Yeah. Do we know how they might react to this?
We don't, and that becomes the big question now. Will these local station affiliates choose to air Jimmy Kimmel Live, or will they continue to protest the comedian even though the network is bringing him back nationwide? ABC does gently chastise Kimmel in this statement. The statement says, quote, "The decision to suspend him, we made it because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive." So they're very gently saying they disagreed with Kimmel last week, but obviously they're bringing him back as of tomorrow.
And we don't know, obviously, all of the considerations that went into this, Brian. But I would say leaders, obviously, at ABC and Disney have had the benefit of a few days of feedback.
Yeah, including from Disney employees who were very disturbed, including from Hollywood stars and showrunners, the kind of people Disney wants to work with, and from free speech groups, politicians, even some Republican politicians like Ted Cruz. We know the condemnation of Disney has been widespread. Now, what we don't know yet is what the counter reaction will be from President Trump and his allies.
That's a really good point. Brian, please stand by. Terry, your reaction to this news?
It's great news. It's great news. And I think you're absolutely right, and Brian is absolutely right. This was a community standing up for the rights of Jimmy Kimmel and all people who speak in public, entertainers and journalists and all of them. And it worked, at least with the head of Disney. And it makes good sense because they would have won in court. One thing that gets lost in this, you do not lose your First Amendment rights because you have a broadcast license. The Supreme Court has been clear on this. The government cannot take your license because of speech they don't like.
You were talking about Katharine Graham when the news broke, and these are the considerations of these bigger companies about how they're going.
Yeah, I mean, there are degrees to this. I'm living out right now. Don't listen to me. There are degrees to this. There are still types of speech and different classes of people in the eyes of this administration. Those who this administration consider to be discardable, right? Migrants, for example. This is a major corporation that has the financial power to push back against the administration. And I was very worried, very concerned that this major corporation would actually cave to the administration's demands, no matter how unreasonable or unjust they may be. Okay? It turns out that there is enough pushback from the public that the major corporation decided probably not the best idea to capitulate to the Trump administration's demands. Now, having said that, there are still the attacks against free speech did not start with Jimmy Kimmel. The attacks on the First Amendment did not begin with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel simply was seen by enough members of the public as an overreach. The attacks against the First Amendment have been ongoing, okay, around pro-Palestinian advocacy, even under the Biden administration, and certainly escalated under the Trump administration. And it is a real shame that mainstream outlets did not adequately cover that when it was happening. Okay? It's really frustrating. So remember, the fight continues. So it is upon all of us to tie back this attack on the First Amendment, this clear-cut attack on the First Amendment, back to the clear-cut attack that is ongoing against pro-Palestinian advocacy. Okay? We have to try and get people to recognize that this isn't just about Disney capitulating. This isn't just we cannot rely exclusively on big corporations to fight back. Okay? Yeah, we vote with our dollars. People are boycotting Disney and canceling their streaming subscriptions. I know. A lot of people did that. Google searches for cancel Disney Plus and cancel Hulu have spiked in the day since the network suspension. Some people were stating that they lost like almost $5 billion in revenue in a very short period of time. I'm not so certain that this was like a part of the pressure, but I mean, I'm sure it helped. Or stock price, not revenue. Sorry, yeah, their stock price fell. Their stock price fell. They lost $5 billion in market cap. So they lost value, not revenue directly, but I'm sure they lost some revenue, which is why they lost value as well. Do you predict Nexstar and Sinclair will air Kimmel, or will they continue the cancellation? I can see them continuing their cancellation because they're much more right wing and much more. They have more to lose. They can't appear to be resisting against the administration in any capacity because of the FCC and because of the merger that is imminent for Nexstar. Sinclair is already incredibly right-wing. Nexstar is already incredibly right-wing. And on top of that, they have a mega merger that's coming up. So TPUSA spokesperson Andrew Colvett is saying Disney and ABC caving and allowing Kimmel back on the air is not surprising, but it's their first mistake to make. Nexstar and Sinclair do not have to make that same choice. Once again, I am, I guess, not so shocked, but still very much annoyed that this is the major mover and shaker event for a lot of people. I don't want to be the friend who's too woke, but, you know, these are consequential decisions being made, which is why I took it seriously at the time. But the fight is far larger than Jimmy Kimmel, okay? If your goal is to defend the First Amendment, if your goal is to defend free speech, you must understand that this extends far beyond just Jimmy Kimmel losing its time slot. But it's good. It's an eye-opening moment for a lot of people. A lot of people who don't really give a shit about Jimmy Kimmel either, by the way. But they saw, it's not like Jimmy Kimmel had this many loyal fans, myself included. I don't give a shit, right? But the reason why a lot of people got mad, even conservatives, as a matter of fact, got mad. Ted Cruz was like, this is crazy. This is mafia shit. The reason why they were doing that, the reason why they were saying that was because there are still Americans who value the First Amendment. There are still Americans who value freedom of speech. Now, the Trump administration has made a calculation that Americans that value the First Amendment and free speech also are very racist. So they're racist enough to not give a shit when it is eroded at the point of immigration enforcement and it is eroded at the point of pro-Palestinian advocacy, right? And they have been somewhat successful in that endeavor. They have revoked student visas. They have denied visas to people, not on the basis of like being too critical of Israel, but also on the basis of like, you know, being critical of Charlie Kirk even, right? That's a real thing that's taking place. So it is upon us to remind people that this is not like just this is a victory that should galvanize us. And we should use the renewed enthusiasm to continue pushing back against this administration's unfavorable policies that represent a change in the way that we value the First Amendment, that represent an erosion of the freedom of speech.
To handle this and how they're going to think about it, they do have the benefit of some history as they do consider these moves.
Right. Well, Katharine Graham, when Nixon threatened to take her FCC, the Washington Post's FCC licenses, they had some local stations. It was a main source of income. She published them anyway. She said, forget about it. And that kind of corporate courage is rare, especially in the face of an administration that exceeds by many orders of magnitude any other presidency trying to silence speech it doesn't like.
If we still have Brian, I want to go back to him because one of the interesting bits of reporting that we got over the last few days was that Kimmel was actually preparing a monologue that would up the ante against some of the feedback that he got from the Trump administration. I mean, can you imagine, Brian, what might be formulating in terms of a response when he gets back on the air?
Right. Kimmel wanted to defend himself. So now Tuesday night's monologue becomes even more interesting. What he will be critical, and it might affect what local stations decide to do going forward.
Yeah, certainly will. I want to know what you think, Terry, about just sort of the moment that we are in when it comes to free speech. And I also want to play a moment from the White House press briefing today. This was a correspondent for Turning Point USA Frontline, associated with the group that Charlie Kirk founded, who asked the White House press secretary what her message is to Americans who are too afraid to express their beliefs. Here's a brief part of what Caroline Leavitt said.
We have a right to free speech in this country. The president supports it. It is protected by our beautiful Constitution. And Americans should not cower in fear. They should rise up in courage to continue speaking the truth.
What do you think about what you're hearing from the White House there as we just get this news that Jimmy Kimmel will return to air tomorrow night?
Right. Well, see what the White House says. Everybody should speak up except the ones that the president doesn't like. He just barked at my former colleague, Jonathan Karl. Maybe we'll come after you because.
Yeah, this is the thing, okay? When it's a white dude who's rich, who's a Hollywood guy, and he gets silenced like this, he gets suppressed like this, then all of a sudden it is a reminder for a lot of people that are also in the same position, if not as popular as Jimmy Kimmel, to go, oh, they're going to come after us too. Does that make sense? Like there's a class interest here, not class in the Marxist sense, but there's a class interest that these guys do not have, a sense of solidarity they do not have for their counterparts in Gaza, for example. When Israel murders relentlessly hundreds of journalists in Gaza, they do not give a shit. There's not a single peep from any of these monsters, okay? But for Jimmy Kimmel, obviously, they're going to be like, well, this is really messed up. You know, they're coming for all of us. They're coming for all of us. We got to do something about it. And this shows once again that the mainstream press does have a lot of motion still in getting this kind of information and creating an environment of panic, necessary panic in the eyes of many Americans. Okay? This is why I'm so frustrated with the media coverage surrounding all things related to Israel.
I don't like the content of your news coverage. All of this is bedrock First Amendment rights that we all have. And I think they've overreached here. Most Americans, even many who support President Trump, did not like the kind of gangster talk that the head of the FCC said, yeah, you can do this the easy way, you can do it the hard way. And they understand how precious this right is, even for people that they disagree strongly with. There's good common sense about our First Amendment rights, and I think Trump is running up against that.
Yeah, Senator Ted Cruz said it was out of Goodfellas, to your point there. Terry, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. And this is the breaking news just in from Disney.